Hello, everybody. Your artist friend Chris Dyer here with a beautiful live interview I got for you today. All right. He's gonna get on in 2 seconds, guys. I'm very excited for this. Yes!
All right.
Woo!
Can you hear me and see me?
Yes. Amazing.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Oh man, I tuned in. I tried to get on my laptop and I saw the live and just one sentence you said something about how smart I am, and then I'm like spending 15 minutes trying to get onto this. I'm like
Right.
not feeling
Well,
so smart right now. But anyway, thank you.
Well, you've made me feel not better, but less nervous because I was like, oh my God, I never interview people. I usually am the person who people interview. But then your assistant said we should have a conversation. And I was like, yeah, amazing. But then I started looking at your videos on YouTube. And I'm like, holy shit, this guy's way too intelligent. What am I gonna do?
Yeah.
So you've made me feel better with this. Whatever. This is just technicalities of Instagram, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. Let me look at the time because this will cut off in an hour. So by 11:30, I will cut this out. So let's get to the point because I'm looking so forward to picking your brain here. Maybe just like a quick introduction to my viewers who might not know you. Please tell us a little bit about yourself so we know.
I usually just say I'm a writer. I write books and essays and things, and I do public speaking, and nothing that impressive. I just hunt over my computer and wiggle my fingers.
Well, you're a
Yeah.
philosopher, right?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I'm not like an academic philosopher. So I don't usually. I don't know. If you say I'm a philosopher, then it means that you've made a deep study of Plato and Kant and Nietzsche and et cetera. And I haven't done that really.
Well, I don't think KRS-One had a title neither, but he was also a philosopher. So, I don't
Yeah.
think papers really have to validate our intelligence or
Yeah.
the great things going through our mind. Now,
Bob
I read
Marley was a philosopher too, right?
of course, and he was
So
one
yeah.
of the best ones.
So why not?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. But, regardless of papers or who you are for society or blah, 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 I read your paper last week and I was like, wow, this guy's got a really nice perspective, middle ground on everything. So I really, want to get into that specific paper on the COVID situation because I think, we all got perspectives and points of views, and something that you really brought up is that you don't necessarily know the truth. And then when I was listening to your videos on YouTube, you were also very comfortable with not knowing and the freedom and the letting go of not having to know and own the truth. But in that place of not knowing, anything becomes a possibility. So you're in this nice middle ground between all the possibilities, which I think is very liberating because then we got more options. Now, one point that you brought up in that paper is that we don't really know how long this will last, and we don't know where it will lead. And you said this could possibly become into the new normal. Like if the virus doesn't leave, it could happen that we all end up having to live in our homes with all these precautions and social distancing for who knows how long. And then you bring up the questions like, well, that's the point where society will have to stop and value or see what they value more. Do you value more staying alive and living a miserable life of never seeing people, or can you just accept death and live a rich life where you die? Could you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah. I went down so many rabbit holes when COVID came on the scene. There's the official narrative. There's all of these different alternative narratives going into the realm of what people call conspiracy theories. And my initial impulse is to doubt what I'm being told. Maybe because I have oppositional defiant disorder or something like that. I tend to be skeptical of what the authorities are telling us. But that doesn't mean that they're always wrong either. Like maybe they're right. And do I want to allow my psychological defiance to possibly kill millions of people if people are going to listen to me when I say, okay, guys, there's more to the story than we're being told. Like, I wanted to first go into, I really don't know. And that already, and then from there to go, and what do I actually know that applies no matter which side is right? Like what other source of knowledge do I have that doesn't depend on me taking somebody's word for it? Because you can say, well, I'm not going to take someone's word for it. I'm going to look into the science. But then there's profound disagreement on the science too. And also in my life, I've experienced things that science has said is impossible. And I've had, I don't know, like psychedelic experiences that have cast the scientific worldview that I grew up in as maybe not being wrong, but as being a very tiny sector of reality. So I'm not going to be like, okay, everybody, let's take what official science tells us for granted and go from there. I'm like, let's put everything on the table for questioning. And what then, so you talked about like death and uncertainty. So one thing that I was resisting was any tidy narrative or answer to here's what's going on. Okay, guys, I know what's going on. That's not only what the WHO and the CDC are kind of saying, but it's to some extent like it's a dangerous virus, et cetera, et cetera. They have a story. We have to do social distancing. We have to do lockdown. Okay, they've got their story. But the alternative people have their story too. They're no different. They're like, let me tell you, I'm the guy who knows. Here's what's going on. And if you don't listen to me, terrible things are going to happen. And I'm like, why do these people all think that they're right? How are they so sure that they're right? And it's like this, it's all a way to try to control the world, even through our concepts. That whole impulse to become the master of reality by extending a story that covers everything and says, now I know. Like there's a comfort in that. Oh, now I know what's going on. Now I know what to do. But is that authentic? And this release of control, this release into maybe we don't know, it's uncomfortable, and it's a similar discomfort when we face death. And that's what takes me to the point you were making there. Like whether, like regardless of how far the virus is spreading, I mean, some people don't even think it's caused by a virus. I mean, there's that rabbit hole. Or how dangerous it is it as dangerous as we were being told, et cetera, et cetera. The question that you're mentioning, I'll just kind of repeat what you said. It's like, how much of our life and for how long do we want to mortgage to the cause of risk minimization? Like, is the most important thing, like, what if it is more dangerous to shake hands and to hug and to have parties and to have festivals and to have dances? What if that increases your death risk by 1% or 5% or 50%? Do you still want to do it? For me, if it was 50%, if this was the bubonic plague, I would probably say no. Wouldn't want to do it. Wouldn't want to put myself and others at risk. But what if it's 1%? What if it's 0.5%? And what if we're not talking for a couple months? What if we're talking for a couple years or forever? Like, and that's what Fauci said. The guy and Dr. Fauci. He's like, we should never handshake again. Yeah. And so this is the logic of risk minimization and safety, which is, I'm not saying it's not valuable and that we shouldn't try to keep people alive, but is it the only value? Does it trump everything else? Or might we be willing to accept a little bit of risk to explore our boundaries and to have sociality? And, this is the question I think it's raising.
It's a question we have to ask ourselves as society at one point, maybe put it to a vote, or I don't know how we can really answer it at a global scheme, you know, because really when it comes to say like, oh, do I never want to hug a friend for the rest of my life at the risk of dying? I think I would be like, you know what? I accept death. I feel like I'm an eternal being of light. And if I am meant to die, I will go back to source and I'll come back some other time. And I'm comfortable with that. I'd rather not pass that on to my parents who maybe want to keep on living a happy retirement. So that's a factor. But yeah, I want to live a life, you know, like if this is going to last forever, that's when as society, we're going to have to come together and make decisions and maybe, you know, I don't know what's the solution, but definitely a very good question you had on that point. Now, how long, I don't want to ask you for predictions. You probably don't know as much as anybody else knows because you're not trying to own the truth. And I really love the point you said there, that people are all trying to tell you that they know the truth because they're actually really stressed out, and thinking that they know the truth relaxes them, even if that truth is a negative one and is also stressing them out. I myself like to think like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to focus on positivity. I'm going to focus on my own personal spiritual healing so that vibration can go out and heal the world, because I believe the world's made out of vibration. And if we're all vibrating in a positive way, we attract the positive future, the parallel quantum reality. But that's my personal belief, and I don't push it on anybody. But do you have any idea if this is something that's going to go away in a couple months, at the end of the year, or in years to come? Like from your personal observations, what's your feeling about it?
You know, what could happen is that no one ever agrees, or that there's no general agreement on when it's gone away. Just as right now, there's no general agreement on how many people are dying from it. I mean, we have the official statistics, but then there are people saying, well, those underestimate it because they don't count a lot of the people who died at home. Then there are those who are saying the official statistics overestimate it because anyone who's test positive for COVID is marked as dying of COVID, even if they've only, you know, even if they died of something else, like a heart attack. So no one agrees right now. No one agrees on how much it's spread. There's recent research that seems to indicate that it's spread like 50 times more than we've been told, and that it is therefore 50 times less deadly. No one agrees on that. Okay. And I think it's very possible that no one will really agree. Well, there will be disagreement about, is it really over or not? Could it come back? Is immunity permanent? Could the virus mutate? Which means that there's always going to be a reason to continue the lockdown. And at some point, we're going to have to make a choice based on incomplete information. And when you choose based on incomplete information, then you're choosing based on judgments and values. It's inescapable. And that brings us back to the discussion that you were just saying, like we got to, at some point, have a social conversation about what we hold to be important.
Right. One of the points you brought up was like, even if you're going to die, there is such a thing as dying well. And you specifically said that doesn't mean dying painlessly, but dying with honor, you know, surrounded by your tribe, your family, and, you know, leaving, being at peace. You know, you brought up the example of a shaman who was asked, what would happen if you got COVID? Would you go to a hospital and get a bunch of tubes up your mouth? And he said, fuck no, like I'd rather stay in my tribe with my loved ones around me, and they send me off to a spirit world, you know, nicely. And that's honorable and that's normal. And I don't fear death. And that's part of life. And that's what was dealt to me. So why should I spend, you know, the last moments of being alive in such a unliving kind of fashion? So that's another question to be made. But okay, so a question to you. Okay, in this whole thing with the people who are more on the side of what people call conspiracy theory. And when I say conspiracy theory, it's really just alternative information to the one that's given in the mainstream. So it's not like a diss or anything, because really it could be as true as anything. I don't know. There's no way for me to own the truth neither. There's the, you know, people say that there's something wrong with the vaccine. We should resist the vaccine. And then later on, the whole thing with the invisible tattoo and the, you know, the cattle thing that they want to turn us into slaves. So that's further on. But let's just go stay with the vaccine. What's wrong with the vaccine, and why are people resisting it? In some cases, vaccines have been good to humanity and helped us out. I myself don't resist it, but I'm also not running towards it because there is this warning in the air, like don't let the Illuminati or whatever own you by having this vaccine. So do you have an idea why there's a fear of the vaccine, and why should we stay away from it, or why should we not be so afraid of it?
Yeah, I mean, that is a huge and very controversial topic. You know, if I wanted to like totally alienate half of my readership, I would come out one way or another on vaccines. If I come out pro, I'm going to alienate half. If I come out anti, I'm going to alienate the other half.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean that I'm just sitting on the fence either. But I look at what's really underneath this incredibly polarizing issue. Those who are pro-vaccine, basically, you know, they accept the consensus of science as it is officially presented to them. And those who are anti-vaccine, for some reason, they doubt that what they're being told is true. Some of them have personal experiences that underscore or intensify that doubt. And it's such a deep issue that is not so simple as what both sides seem to say, which is that there are some inexcusable, awful people who either are perpetrating dangerous and not that effective medicines that are full of poison onto the public, that mess with our immune systems, that cause allergies. And I mean, there's a whole case that is made that I think it's not fantasy. Like, it can't be just waved away as unscientific ravings, which is what the pro-vaccine side does. But I also don't think that the establishment is full of corrupt, evil people who are maliciously perpetrating some kind of, you know, anti-human technology on people. Like, the people who are in the world of conventional medicine are mostly very scrupulous, caring people. And so here is a point where both sides are wrong. They're wrong in their understanding of the other side. So when I say that, I make enemies on every side. Because, like, for example, I could be accused of setting up a false equivalency between the pro and the anti. And they say, you know, you wouldn't say that Holocaust deniers should have an equal hearing with the conventional story, you know. But that accusation takes for granted that, yeah, my side's right. So, you know, personally, because of a gut instinct, and because I know so many people and have heard so many stories about the vaccines damaging their children that are hard to dismiss. Therefore, I don't vaccinate. You know, the story is like, my child was a healthy, happy 2-year-old, but when I took him to get vaccinated, he cried and screamed for 3 days and had a fever, and the doctor said it's fine, and he did get better. And then the next vaccination, the same thing happened. And the third time, after he was vaccinated, he started to cry and scream and had a fever, and he never went back to normal. He stopped making eye contact. He stopped talking. No one in the world can tell me that was just a coincidence that happened to coincide with the vaccine. I'm a parent, I know. And then, you know, from the medical establishment, it's like, that is an anecdote. That is, you know, that it's a coincidence. There's no proof. And so, you know, at some point, and that could be true. Like, that's not proof. It could be coincidence. But when you encounter hundreds and on some of the websites, thousands and thousands and thousands of stories like that, you start to wonder a little bit. And then you look into
Right.
what's in the vaccines and how they actually work, and you start to wonder a little more. And ultimately, you have to make a choice.
Right.
So, you know, and then there's like the political aspect. I'm sorry I'm going on so long about this, but you did ask and open up the can of worms. You know, there's the political aspect of, does the state have the authority to over your body? Like, are you sovereign over what goes into your body and your children's, or does the state have that sovereignty? And that's not always a simple question, because what if your sovereignty is going to put other people at risk? So again, it comes down to, what is our highest value? And how do we balance these values? It's not which one do we ignore. It's a complicated thing. There's nuance here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so many unknowns that we're kind of like walking in the dark and trying to hold the hand to whoever reaches it out. And sometimes those people can take us in the wrong direction too. And we're all just trying to figure it out. Definitely, in my personal opinion, and I would imagine you agree, as you just said, it shouldn't be like this mandatory era. It should do it by law. And the whole thing of like getting a tattoo so people will know or not. I don't know if that's real or not. I hope it's not. Sounds very sci-fi, weird, darkness. But definitely, if that was an option, I would hope the whole population would rise up and say, fuck no. I don't want to look at the future with fear, because fear is a vibration that attracts the negativity and the negative parallel dimension. But at the same time, I can't be irresponsible and just totally not think about it. And then we're taken there. And then that happens. So there's this kind of like middle ground where you kind of got to keep it in your blind spot while not focusing so much on it. But I would hope that if a vaccine comes, it'd be optional. I would like to see who's making it, what's in it, and who's profiting from it. Hopefully it's given for free to all the population. I would love if the country of the United States, which is not my country, I'm Canadian, Peruvian, I would love if that country would start just taking care of all its people for free, because fucking health is a human right and every other country is doing it. I would hope that this whole virus situation makes nations and leaders and governments and etc. stand up, stand for the occasion and do what's correct and keep people alive, and make sure that nobody dies of hunger, and basically just bring out the goodness of people. And let's hope that the bad people who are there won't take advantage of it neither. But in your paper, once again, you said that this is like an opportunity for parallel future realities to happen. It could be this optimistic future where we all realize we want to do good to the planet and do good to ourselves and reform the economy and reform the environment and basically just become the humanity we're supposed to be because we're good people inside. Or we allow the negative controllers to take us down the road of totalitarianism. I can't say that word very well. Yeah. But basically, 1984, Brave New World kind of scenario. And it seems like both possibilities are right now. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. How do we avoid, in your personal opinion, how do we avoid the negative future from happening, and how do we empower the positive future for happening?
Yeah. Thanks for that question. And I've been looking at some of the comments scrolling across the screen, super interesting. And there was one, conspiracy theory is a term invented by the CIA to discredit rational thinkers was one of them. And I'll get to your question in a second, but that one just, jumped out at me. It's like, if you hold a view that that differs from the official view, then you must be crazy. So there's these various labels to describe you, like conspiracy theorist. Personally, I think that conspiracy theories, by which I mean that the evils of the world are caused by a conscious plot by a small group of conspirators. In general, I think that gives them too much credit for being in control of things and doesn't leave enough room for ordinary human folly and you know, I recently had a conversation with someone who was in the Obama administration, quite high up, and is still in those circles. He said, "There's no one driving the bus. No one's in control of this thing." And so that leading to the other point, that is actually a tremendous opportunity, because I would say that who has been driving the bus has been unconscious forces. It's like we've all been sitting on this bus that is heading toward a cliff, or heading towards hell, heading towards a terrible world, heading towards ecological destruction, heading towards social decay, economic inequality, et cetera, et cetera. And now the bus kind of developed some engine trouble, and it's stalled. And what do? Do we try to fix the engine and have it continue driving in the same direction? Or do we say, hey, we have an opportunity here to start to steer that bus to anywhere we want to go? We can do anything. That's one of the messages of the lockdown. Like we're making such enormous changes in such a short period of time that says we could do anything. Another comment said the light is always greater than the dark. I'm not so sure that the light is going to come and rescue us. I think that we're always in choice, and that an interruption in normality brings the choice into our awareness, because we might have been on autopilot when we're subject to the routines of life and the structures outside of us. And now there's this moment of clarity and choice and sovereignty, that we can look into these different futures. And to do that, it's not like that, you know, we should avoid fear, or be afraid of fear, or be afraid of any scenario that would instill fear in us. But we got to take in all of the data points. We got to look at the possibility of totalitarian dystopia and the trends that are pointing toward that, and say, yeah, that is a possibility. The fear and the indignation that we feel from taking that in, that's part of our digestive system, to take in that possibility. And then we can look at another possibility that is suggested by the crisis, where we all come together, where we all take care of each other, where we take care of the most vulnerable people, where we maybe re-embrace alternative medicine and other technologies, other psycho-spiritual technologies even, that are beyond the official reality. We say, wow, we've been operating in much too narrow a paradigm. Let's open that up. Like we could take in those data points too. The most sublime experiences that you've had in your life, when you've been in flow, in cooperation with other people, in gift, in generosity. Those data points, we got to take in all of the data points and digest them. The digestion takes the form of fear, grief, joy, anger, ecstasy. All of those are ways that we take in that information and embody it. And then we exercise our power of choice and conceive together what future is possible. Even if it seems impossible. When we take in all the information, yeah.
So once again, you're saying that the possibilities are all there. We just each have to do individual steps to choosing for some kind of positive solutions in our own way. And there's not a general answer to that. Just kind of like find your own way to make your life better and to others better.
Well, and also find your own way to work with others to create collective realities that are better too. But right. The personal and the political are intimately linked. And the personal choices we make exercise a claim on the future, or issue a prayer to the future that those personal actions are aligned with. So just like if you're being generous and kind and brave, then you are summoning a future that aligns with those qualities. And
right.
And yeah.
So it seems to me you're a spiritual person. Do you believe that this whole transition is both a transition for the world, but also an inner transition for each one of us individuals right now in the cocoon of our homes? Do you think that our process and personal transmutation into better individuals is as important for the world as it is to ourselves? As we become more enlightened in this opportunity to become better, that will greatly affect the world, or is that separate?
I mean, I think it's, how can it be separate? You know, when society and politics, governments, corporations, I mean, these are composed of human beings. So as we change, it's not that they automatically change just because you've had an inner shift. But if you've had an inner shift, then the way you see and the way you act in the world, the way you speak to others, the way you organize, everything is going to be different. So, right. Yeah. I mean, otherwise, like, how do you even know, without some self-knowledge and self-reflection, how do you know whether you're really acting for positive change in the world, or if you're trying to look good to yourself, to your inner critic, and to the people around you to make it look as if you're one of the good guys? How do you know you're actually serving? You know, this...
Right.
Yeah.
As you evolve and you become a better person, when the options are laid on the table, you will be attracted closer to the option that resonates more with this new person you've created in this process. Yeah. Thus, if we all do that, we will choose for the most positive world, hopefully. Now, today is Earth Day, and I wanted to get a little bit off this COVID topic, though it seems like everything's tied in. Do you have hope that we can make this planet go on in a respectful environmental way? Is that realistic? You know, we've all become so selfish. We all become so comfortable in all the pleasures of our society. Even good people like us still has a lot of work to do before we can actually be sustainable. And then there's other people who just don't give a fuck.
I don't think that people like us are good people. I don't think that we're okay. Any better than anybody else.
Okay, good.
And I don't think that this is a matter of self-improvement. Once you buy into this narrative of self-improvement, and I've come so far and I've done all this work, then you're letting judgment in the back door because some other people haven't done the work and they haven't improved. And what you're really saying is, man, maybe I'm not as good as the Dalai Lama, but I'm better than a lot of those people out there. That is, yeah, that's spiritual elitism. And I think that...
Sorry about that.
No, it's just, I mean, this way of thinking is naturally suggested to us by the entire edifice of Western civilization, and maybe beyond Western civilization. I mean, this is, you know, we are trained, indoctrinated to think in those terms, to think in terms of war, whether it's a war against viruses or a war against terrorists or criminals or a war against some bad part of ourselves. So I don't think that this is ultimately, yes, I do think we're facing an initiation, but it's not into being a better warrior. Not that warrior is a bad thing, and that there is a place in this cosmos for taking a stand, for fighting an aggressor, et cetera, et cetera. But our civilization kind of applies that particular archetype to everything. And it needs to retreat to its proper place to let in other ways of change and other kinds of narratives where it might be about radical acceptance. It might be about slowing down. It might be about taking a pause. It might be about letting in the excluded parts. It might be about connecting more. There's a lot that's been squeezed out.
So sorry for creating us versus them scenario. I totally understand you. I believe in oneness. I believe we're all in it together. I believe we all got good and bad inside. And I guess saying like we're the good guys and they're the bad guys. I guess what I was trying to say, there's some people who care about the planet and have the intention to do work in their lives and for the planet to help reduce the damage we're doing. And there's other people who don't care so much and will do whatever they want. And that's all that matters to them.
Why does that all that matters to them?
I don't know. I don't know their lives, I guess.
That's a good question. But, yeah. And that's a good answer. Like, I don't know. Because what comes from I don't know is curiosity. And
I want to heal everyone. Like, however I can help other people grow their love for themselves and for the planet and thus for the collective humanity, that's what I'm up to, you know, with my art, with whatever I can share. But I also respect the process of individuals, that we're all got our own thing going, and I'm not here to force my point of view on others. I can only put my option on the table, and if it resonates with them, they take it and they use that medicine.
I was looking at, when I was trying to make Instagram work, I was looking at your artwork and felt quite moved by it. Like, it seems like it is a vehicle for some kind of information that's related to the answer I wanted to give to your question, which is, you know, what about the people who don't care about the planet? And I started saying, well, you know, why don't they care? It's because they are missing something, an experience of life that in its lack, they seek a substitute, seek the substitute of money or power, possessions, control. But we have to recognize that those who have achieved those things, the 1%, the elites, they're not doing very well. They're not very happy. This isn't working for them. And when they look at some of that visionary art that I saw on your Instagram here, I think it conveys something of that message, that the pinnacle of success and power and wealth is actually a prison. And here comes a data point from the outside. It could come in the form of art. It could come in the form of going to Peru and spending time with the Caro and like realizing, wow, I've never seen a happy person until now. Like, and the trappings of success are a booby prize, which it's better than living in modern industrial society and not being privileged and successful, you know, and living in a slum or something. But it's not what human beings are meant to be. This is not how we're meant to live. We're in such a narrow worldview, and we got to, it's time to break it open, you know?
Right. It's very, it seems like it's very polarized between, you know, like if you go down the route of materialism, let's call it, and ego, it's like, oh, I want all the power and the money and the recognition and the fame. But then you realize that you can't find that love outside of yourself, that love has to come from inside. But then those who don't have it, they have so little that they can't feed their families and get the basics to just have a normal life. So, you know, we really need to, as a society, find a way to cure that sickness, that true virus of the mind, where we make sure that everybody has their basics met. And then abundance is not a curse, you know, if you know what it's about. It's about sharing the love and spreading good vibes around. And that's, I guess, what we're up to and trying to do to spread that good vibe, even though it's not the main medicine in the mainstream. But, you know, we're out there, we're doing what we can, and hopefully that spreads out in moments like this where people are looking for alternate sources of information than what the TV is giving them. But to go back to my other question, do you have hope in the future that we can rescue this planet? Like, if we can rescue the situation of the human consciousness, if we can all understand that everybody should be okay to start with, and then we can grow in abundance as we wish, because there's no evil in that neither. But, you know, do you think we have hope to heal ourselves as humanity and thus the environment?
Yes, I do have hope. And let me say what I mean by hope. It's not a delusion or a fantasy. Hope is the authentic recognition of a possibility. That's what real hope is. So I would say that I know that a more beautiful world is possible. And what I mean by possible, it's not, well, maybe if we roll double sixes on the dice, then it'll happen. Possible means that it is within the scope of our agency to create, that we are faced with choices that could bring us to that more beautiful world. It is not outside of our power. We are sovereign to create the future. And that's pretty obvious on a social, political level. Like if we were all unified in agreement, none of the world's problems would be at all hard to solve. There's no technical barrier to feeding everybody, to living in peace, to healing the environment. It's easy. Look at regenerative agriculture and the life that can come back to devastated ecosystems in a few years. We can do it. Like if there's no technical barrier, it is a matter of human agreement. That's obvious. It's our agreements that create our world. It gets a little bit more metaphysical or mysterious when it comes down to personal choice. Like, because then the mind of separation says, well, even if I do everything in alignment with that more beautiful world, if everybody else doesn't do it, then it's not going to happen and I can't control everybody else. So then you're back into victimization. You're back into helplessness. So there's a mysterious knowledge that your choices are significant, just like everybody else's. It's a paradox for the mind of separation. Yet we can feel the truth that even our tiny invisible choices have cosmic significance. That choice you make to hold the hand of your dying loved one and receive their forgiveness as they pass. You know that that is important. You know it in your heart. Your mind cannot say how that is going to change the future, how that is going to solve the political problems, or stop military imperialism or neoliberal capitalism or whatever. The mind can't say how, but there's a heart knowledge that I think we have to. We don't have to, but we can choose to trust that. And I think that yeah, I'll just say that.
So it goes back to the individual, like the change, the shift.
Yeah, but how does the individual learn it? Like you said before, the love has to come from within. But how do you learn how to love yourself? The way I learn is when people love me unconditionally, when they see through all of my pretenses and they love me anyway. I learn something. So maybe self-love isn't this new accomplishment that we have to achieve in order to be aligned with a better world. Maybe it's a gift that we receive. And as we touch into the reality of gratitude, we will learn and embody self-love more and more by showing it to each other. Yeah.
Right. Because we're mirrors, and you don't live life by yourself. I can tell myself, I love you, Chris, till the day, but who am I speaking to? know, I'm trying to speak to myself. And you need, as much as it sucks to always have to reach out and be like, please love me, please world, give me validation for my existence. There's a balance where you can't also depend on that 100%. But as you said, you do learn what love means when people love you for who you are, regardless of your, your ups and your downs. So that's a good point.
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot from this conversation, Charles.
Yeah. Like so regardless of whether you're an amazing artist or a philosopher or anything, like your mother loves you, I imagine. And
yeah, she does.
And it's not because, she sees all of you. Like she's seeing something real. We can learn from the mothers what the truth is. And anytime
I'm staying with my parents here in Peru, and I just feel so comfortable here, my parents would never judge me or, they get mad at me, but it's normal stuff, but they would never hate me or judge me or treat me bad. And I wish I could go out in the world and feel that same love from everybody else. It'd be great if we could all, you know, share the mother love to others and receive it too.
Yeah, they at least remind us of what's true. Every time I look at a picture of Donald Trump or a picture of somebody who I'm being invited to hate, I go back in time and I think, you know, once upon a time, he was a baby. He was a sweetums, a little cutie pie.
Mm-hmm.
And he deserved love then. What happened?
Yeah.
You know, what happened to this
Right.
man? Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about compassion for everybody. We're all humans who are manifestations of the spirit of the Most High, and everybody deserves compassion. And when we sometimes when we hate, it's almost like we're hating aspects of ourselves that we're not happy with. But we always have to remember that if that person's saying or doing something bad is because they're ill, and if anything, we need to have extra compassion for that ill person that needs some help. It's hard to do sometimes, though.
Yeah, but we can help each other do it.
Right. So, yeah, it's a good message of spreading that mother love in the world. So we're on our last 10 minutes. There was one article that I saw on your webpage when I was reading the article about the virus. I went through and it's like there was one on the side that said about ascension. And I was like, this guy's talking about ascension. And I looked at it and it was kind of old and it was kind of short. But you kept it on your webpage. So do you still believe that humanity could ascend spiritually? That was even before 2012 when people were talking that we could evolve into a more spiritual society, even if it takes us hundreds of years.
So I don't remember that essay, but I did not then and do not now think in terms of ascension in the sense of rising above the material. I think it's more about descending and becoming more fully material in a sacred sense of, it's not like, so like spiritual ascension is like, well, you know, the body, that's not that important. The world, that's not important. Worldly things, mundane things, that's the profane. What's important is the otherworldly, the above the world, the spiritual, not the material. And I think that that is actually a poison to the world. If we think that the worldly is not important, then we treat the world as not important. That is nature.
Right.
You know, that is the body. So I think it's more about becoming, in a way, more materialistic in the sense of seeing that all things are sacred, including our bodies, including the soil, you know, including the rocks. I mean, what is of a denser vibration than rocks? What's wrong with low vibrations? You know, like,
I love crystals.
Yeah, I love bassoons. You know, I love bass violins. These are all low vibrations. And when they're a part of a beautiful symphony, then every vibration has its place. So
right.
I don't, and this whole idea of ascension, this rising above, I mean, this has been the project not only of conventional spirituality, but also of science and the regime of reason, where the mind is more important than anything else. The abstract is more important than the concrete. So I do not support that idea of ascending. But I do think, like, I would say that I'm spiritual in another sense, which is that we've left out a lot from materiality. We've reduced materiality to less than it really is. In fact, matter is so much more marvelous than we've given it credit for. Like, even water has incredible structure and beauty and intelligence that is not recognized in chemistry. But indigenous people knew that. They didn't think necessarily that there was an outside spirit that infused water. They thought that water itself is a spirit. There was not this divide between the spiritual and the material. So what I want is when I say that I'm spiritual, I mean, I want to bring back these excluded realms, these excluded aspects of reality, the ones that we can't measure, but that are real nonetheless. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Right. I think that's beautiful. I think that's, once again, a middle path between, you know, the spiritual and the physical. Because many times in my own spiritual path, I thought like, oh, what do I have to do to become spiritual? Do I have to hide in a cave and meditate all day? And then I'm like, well, then why the fuck did you come to planet Earth to be a human and have all these experiences?
Yeah.
Like, where is that middle path where you can be out in the world and totally enjoy all the fruits of creation that God gave you for him to experience through you? You know, why are you rejecting that and escaping it? But then sometimes we go too deep on the other side. So it's that middle path where we can intertwine spirit into the material existence. That's not an evil one, as long as we don't go too far on any part of the balance. So well put. Thank you once again for your perspective. And yeah, I also believe that ascension is not about like, you know, burning down the physical plane and all turning into like souls, but bringing more of the soul perspective into this physical plane, combining it with technology, and just making it that we're living from our heart. And, you know, and once again, not killing the mind. We need the mind to make that beautiful world work, but always with balance. So yeah, thank you so much for your perspectives. I think I'm going to end the conversation here because Instagram Live kind of like chops you at 1 hour. And it's been such a pleasure, Charles. Thank you so much for talking with me, and, you know, and all the people who have tuned in. It was a great conversation. Do you have any final words you'd like to say?
Oh, I would just say thank you for your patience when I couldn't figure out how to get on. And yeah, and thank you for such a beautiful conversation. And for your artwork awesome, too. I'm gonna spend some time looking at some of those.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate you. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, thanks. Take care.
You too. Blessings.